Limmer.
Thank you,
You
Mr.
have
Chair.
the next bill.
Senate File 1098 refers to how to deal with tampering with a police vehicle. And I would like to begin that this bill addresses both perception and the real issues of public safety if people tamper with public safety motor vehicles. The current law of intentionally tampering with a motor vehicle is simply a misdemeanor. We have enhanced penalties for many crimes in the past when the crime is specifically directed toward law enforcement or partners in the public safety system. We've heard from the criminal defense attorneys and incorporated their suggestions into an amendment that should be passed out now unless it's in your packets.
It's in the packets.
And I do not have a copy of that amendment.
Let's see, A1 amendment.
And
Why
I
don't we
have
get
a
him a
copy.
copy first?
While we're waiting for it to be passed out, I'd like to play a film that can better represent what some police vehicles suffer at sometimes.
Okay.
Now this one. There we go. This is an individual tampering with the gas tank nozzle of a police car. He's pouring sugar into the gas tank. And if anyone knows about, there's no sound to it, but thank you. This will severely damage the engine of a motor vehicle once you put sugar into the fuel injection system of the car. This is in a public setting. It seems like it's pretty easy to do. Doesn't seem to require, well, the person kind of just blends into the general background of the population. No one seems to be stopping him either. Now he's stuffing something into the tank as well as from after pouring sugar into the tank.
Senator Limmer, did you also add something in our packet that corresponds with that, an article?
Oh,
Yeah.
I do not have that in my packet, but if,
Okay, members, you can find that in your
I've been
packet.
told I do have that in my packet somewhere, but yeah.
Senator Limmer forgot to sign it, but that is from Senator Limmer.
As long as we don't make that a gross misdemeanor, Mr. Chair. I'm
Yeah.
okay. Members, you can read a little bit more in detail on the event that you just saw on the film. But I think what the film represents is pretty much the vulnerability of a police car if it's parked on the side of a road, if the police officer is attending to some kind of emergency or an investigation, he's leaving the car unattended, which happens all the time. And apparently there seems to be this type of crime on the increase in recent days.
Senator Limmer, would you move your A1 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the A1 amendment I'd like to move as an author's amendment.
As an author's amendment. Okay, members, this is an author's amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The A1 amendment is adopted. Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, as members will note, this is a delete everything amendment. The prior bill was kind of a one-size-fits-all type concept. I suppose if one wanted to extrapolate the original bill, if you keyed a car door of a police officer, it would eventually turn into a felony crime. We want to recognize some proportionality to this. And we did hear from criminal defense attorneys regarding the original bill, and this amendment represents some of their concerns. We want to cast a little wider net. The A1 amendment works within our current statutory framework of criminal damage to property, as found in 609.595. If someone intentionally damages a public safety vehicle in a substantial way so that it interrupts or impairs public safety service, then this amendment would make that the felony. And that's found on lines 1.9 through 1.12. This change is in line with the current law of damaging property that a reasonable person would foresee carries a risk of bodily harm. If someone intentionally damages a public safety motor vehicle, then the penalty would be enhanced to a gross misdemeanor. Current law for gross misdemeanor is property damage of a $500 threshold. The bill then adds a definition of what a public safety motor vehicle is, found on lines 2.18 through 2.31. And that means marked law enforcement vehicles, fire trucks, and ambulances. And finally, a definition of damage is included in lines 3.1 through 3.3 to mean obstruction or interference with the vehicle's use. Stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
Members, questions? Otherwise, we have some testimony, Senator. Should we? Oh, not on that one. Okay. So, members, any questions? There are no testifiers here. Hearing none. Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, I move that Senate File 1098 as amended be recommended to pass. And I'm not sure where.
As amended.
I think it's to the floor. As amended and be moved to the
Finance.
floor. Finance.
Okay, Senator Limmer moves Senate File 1098 to pass and be moved to Finance. Did I say as amended?
Yes, you
Okay.
did.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. 1098 has passed. Senator Limmer, Senate File 445.
Mr. Chair, Senate File 445 is the Law Enforcement Coalition proposal. I may have testifiers if they would like to come up to the table now, if they're in the room.
Okay, we can have Mr. Flaherty up and Mr. Gove to start us out. How do you pronounce his name? Schnell and-
Now, Mr. Chair, I've got to explain where we're going on this, the path that we're going.
Okay.
Senate
Senator Limmer.
445 has both policy as well as finance element to it. I'm going to be presenting an amendment to remove the finance portion, and there's a reason why. No one should get annoyed at that because we're going to have a different path for that. But I think it's the A2 amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And I will need a well, I'll look to see if I have a copy.
Members, you should have your A2 amendment in your packet.
Oh, thank you. All right.
So you want to explain that again?
Yes. Mr. Chair, my
Senator Limmer.
intent is to ensure that this bill, Senate File 445, makes the first deadline, and have decided to split this proposal into two parts. One is policy and one is and budget. And we're doing that to reflect the deadlines of both those categories of public policy direction. They have different timing deadlines, but we want to make sure that this policy is going right now. And this committee will be fully vetting the financial aspects of the proposal when we get to the budget hearings, which is in the third week of our deadline. With that in mind, I offer the A2 amendment, which removes the budget portion of the bill to consider at the appropriate time during the third deadline. The policy that we're discussing today can be found in sections 3 and 5 and allows the post board to collect data on people who are applying to become peace officers in order to determine if those applicants reflect the communities those applicants may serve. The language I'm moving forward would allow the post board to request license applicants to provide their racial composition to the post board. The data may only be used for aggregate composition purposes of licensees and applicants. It is not our intention to allow for individualized racial data to be disseminated or use the data to implement any type of quota system. The language is permissive, meaning that the post board may request the data, but it is not required to do so. And one more point I want to make is that this disclosure of this data is voluntary for the applicants as well, so that individuals applying for licenses may make their own decision whether they wish to disclose that information regarding themselves as well. And also on Section 4 of the bill, I'm removing Section 4 of the bill, which would allow the Post Board to deny a license for failing to provide that data. To me, what I'm trying to do is accomplish balance. And we have testifiers here representing the law enforcement community. They came to the legislature with this bill, and I would like them to describe their direction, but with the whole concept of the bill in mind. So they can describe both the budget as well as the policy direction. Before we go any further, I'd like to move the A2 amendment as an author's amendment.
Okay. Senator Limmer has moved the A2 amendment as an author's amendment. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The A2 amendment has passed. Senator Limmer.
Thank you. To begin, I'd like to introduce Dennis Flaherty, the president of the MPPOA, Minnesota Peace and Police Officers Association.
Mr. Flaherty, if you'd give your full name and testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Dennis Flaherty, Executive Director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, representing about 8,500 rank and file officers throughout the state. What we're about to talk about is a product of a coalition that was made up of representatives from the Chiefs Association, the Sheriff's Association, the Post Board, as well as my group. And we began meeting back in the fall to discuss different things that we would be proactive on after obviously hearing from a number of communities in our state. And what we are proposing are significant changes in the training model for police officers in Minnesota. First and foremost, we're removing the funding of the Peace Officer Training Fund from what has been a special revenue account that is made up of proceeds from traffic tickets and other court surcharges, and converting it to a general fund appropriation to the Post Board. This current fund had the proceeds of which have been going down each year. Last year produced about $2.8 million that was spread out to departments throughout the state, which when it was said and done with averaged about $300 per officer per year for training. We're obviously asking for a significant increase in that, and we're looking at a $10 million appropriation, which would translate into about $1,000 per officer in Minnesota. But along with this increased money, we are proposing mandating of certain training, and that it would be required for every peace officer in the state to take this kind of training. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Nate from the Post Board, but I will say that I serve on the Governor's Committee on, or Commission on Police Community Relations, and we presented this concept to them at a meeting, 3 weeks ago. And while no formal vote was taken, I can tell you there was a great deal of enthusiasm, and thought they were tremendously supportive of the increase in the training fund, the money that the state spends on police training, as well as the mandated training in topics that are of great importance to many people in our state. Topics dealing with crisis intervention and de-escalation and cultural diversity and such. So I do look for one of the recommendations coming out of that commission will probably be in strong support of this legislation. So with that, I'd conclude my remarks and turn it over to Nate.
Mr. Gove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, my name is Nate Gove, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Peace Officer Standards and Training Board. And that is correct, as Mr. Flaherty stated, that currently officers are required to have 48 continuing education hours every 3 years. So approximately 1/3 of those in this bill would have specific topics: conflict management and mediation, crisis intervention, and mental health response, as well as recognizing and valuing cultural differences. Those areas would be courses that would be post-approved. The board would utilize learning objectives for the courses to be built, and officers would be required to have a combination of those 3 topics, totaling 16 hours every 3-year licensing cycle. In addition to that, the board would also collect racial aggregate data on officers, as Senator Limmer outlined. It is true that, as Mr. Flaherty pointed to, that the funding mechanism certainly goes hand in hand with this, but I think it's very important that these areas, which are also covered in our pre-service learning objectives for yet to be licensed officers, make sense for current officers as well.
Okay, Chief Schnell.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Paul Schnell. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Maplewood, and here also representing the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association. I want to speak specifically about Section 8 of the bill, which is the Pathways to Policing element, which is intended to bring non-traditional candidates into Minnesota's law enforcement community. This specific provision would provide dollars or grants that would be provided to communities seeking to attract diverse candidates from across Minnesota. These candidates would be those people who have either a 2- or 4-year degree, and then would essentially join on, be hired by a Minnesota law enforcement agency. That agency would bring them on, would provide them with access to the post-required training in order to become licensed as a peace officer. They would be in that program and receive approximately 70% of the pay of a starting police officer. And what this essentially does is it provides a mechanism, a pathway for those people who might not otherwise have considered law enforcement, and particularly to draw more diverse applicants into policing and service to our communities. There is a project that's underway, and Maplewood is one of, I think right now, 6 or 7 communities that are actively engaged in pursuing this. We have talked to several of our colleagues from across the state, communities large and small, that have a tremendous interest in this type of a model. And what's interesting is that in the project that's underway right now, St. Louis Park, Bloomington, a number of other communities have joined together and began a process to accept applications. To date, 482 applications have been received, and now there's a vetting process going on to look at those candidates. Nearly 40% of those applicants are people of color, and this is unheard of in the applications that we have. My community recently did one, and we ended up with about 6% of our applicants were from communities of color. 20% of that 482 applicants are women, and we think that these are important mechanisms to attract diverse candidates. We do believe that this funding is necessary to help attract and help communities do this. It is an expensive proposition, as we are providing a reduced level of pay for the applicants to come into the field while they're in training, which is approximately 16 weeks or so. And then they would begin the traditional field training process that the community that they work for. Finally, I would just say that one of the other unique factors about this is that in the past, it would not be uncommon for agencies like Maplewood or other communities to have literally hundreds and hundreds of applicants. Today, in our last hiring process in communities our size across the metro area, agencies are seeing somewhere between 60 and 80 applicants, down hundreds. And we think it's important that we reach out, we provide mechanisms to draw people into this, and we believe that this is an important investment in, that our state can make in the diversification of Minnesota's law enforcement. And we thank you for your support and ask that you would support this going forward.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Our last testifier is Mayor Pownell. Is she here?
Yep.
Yep.
Get these big guys out.
Ms. Pownell, welcome to the committee. If you'd state your full name and give us your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Rhonda Pownell. I am the mayor of the city of Northfield and the president of the League of Minnesota Cities, statewide association representing 833 of Minnesota's 853 cities. I'm here today to speak in support of Senate File 445. The issues this bill will help to address are issues that are being discussed in city council chambers and community forums all around the state. They are also being discussed in the League's boardroom. In fact, one of the League's board-directed legislative priorities for 2017 is the passage of legislation aimed at enhancing collaboration and trust through improving relationships between law enforcement officers and agencies and communities that they serve. The League supports Senate File 445 for several reasons. The League supports training in the areas specified in the bill: crisis intervention and mental illness crises, conflict management and mediation, and recognizing and valuing community diversity and cultural differences. The League supports efforts to bring persons with non-traditional backgrounds into law enforcement. The grants provided in Senate File 445 for this purpose will help advance this important work. The League appreciates the level of funding provided in the bill. The funding will defray the cost of complying with the bill's mandates for local agencies and their taxpayers. Finally, the bill provides flexibility. It allows the officer and his/her agency to choose the type of training that is the best fit. This is a very important policy consideration for our city councils. The League's experience with delivering training has proven that providing training options is critical to meeting the needs of agencies that have vastly different needs and capacities. Should this bill become law, the League will actively partner with the Peace Officer Standards and Training Board, as we have over many years, to deliver high-quality and cost-effective training to the officers who serve our communities. Thank you, Senator Limmer and co-authors, for bringing this bill forward. I will stand for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And members, as she went through that, I was reminded in a couple weeks we'll be talking about our budget, and some of that reflects to that. So, yes, Senator Schoen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Limmer, that is, I'll be honest with you, it leaves me with great concern about how much of this bill is actionable without the funding. And I will say I don't completely understand why we needed to take action to remove the funding today. I understand that budget is coming up, but it still seems like we could have made an, if we're going to put this policy in place without the funding that comes with it, it seems like we're voting on an unfunded mandate in many areas here if we don't actually end up funding this. And I will say that leaves me greatly concerned. And so if we move this policy forward, Mayor, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, Mr.
And
Chair,
we don't have the funding.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Schoen, this is just a procedural matter that I chose to go in. policy, to meet the policy deadline. As you know, there's a budget deadline a few more weeks from now. And you have my word that we will have this hearing for the budget portion of this bill. I have no intention of moving this bill forward without the appropriate budget policy that will match up with it after our budget hearing.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do
Senator Schoen.
appreciate that. I do appreciate that assurance because I think there's been far too many times that I've been here not in this body, but the other body over 4 years where votes have been taken to say that, well, we supported cops and we did this and we moved forward with this and then went, well, we're going to put $0 into it. So I'm glad to hear that you're saying that that's not going to happen this year. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator
Mr.
Limmer.
Chairman, I think I can speak with fair confidence that I don't think the law enforcement community would allow me to carry this bill if I wasn't going to put the money where my mouth is. And those of us in the Senate, and I know you're new, Senator Schoen, but those of us in the Senate are equally concerned about unfunded mandates. And we're not going in that direction on this bill.
Any other? Senator Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Limmer, or testifiers, have we ever made this kind of a request of the post board or of the agency before to collect this kind of data?
Senator Limmer.
You know, perhaps the post board could better describe that. In my memory, I don't recall this type of data being accumulated. But I think if you've followed recent headlines over the last year, there's been a concern in certain communities in Minnesota that all of the law enforcement that has a very difficult job in communities all across the state of Minnesota seems to be suffering a stereotype. And the stereotype is not so much of who's in the squad cars, but who may be getting the jobs in law enforcement. And we want to know through this legislation who would be applying for licenses, who would be renewing licenses. And I think from a policy standpoint, I think it's important for us to have a racial profile of who applies for these jobs. I think the certain tension in certain communities, I think we owe it to them for that. This may, and it's our hope that in Section 8 of the bill, the original bill, that hopefully we'll be encouraging others to apply for law enforcement police positions across the state. I think there's an impression that that there may be not enough applicants from certain racial areas that are actually applying. And I think it's important for us to know, and I think it's important for the communities to know. And if it doesn't look like it's got a wide representation across racial groups, that should be our focus as well. And this will give a little help to local communities. Did you want to add to that?
Senator
Mr. Chair,
Anderson.
follow up. So, Mr. Chair, Senator Limmer, it doesn't look like there's a timeline as far as when there's going to be, I mean, we're putting it into statute. Is there going to be any type of report coming back to us or to anybody? It doesn't look like there's anything there. It just looks like it's an open-ended
Mr. Gove.
data collection.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Anderson, we will certainly be able to report on a fiscal year basis the number of new applicants. In terms of getting a full snapshot of all of the peace officers, that would take longer time as officers would provide this information at the time of renewal. So be about 3 years till I would be able to capture the full of currently working peace officers.
So, Mr. Chair,
Senator Anderson.
to the testifier, could we get a kind of an update on a yearly basis as to how things are going?
Mr. Gove.
Mr. Chair, Senator Anderson, yes, you could.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Seeing none. Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, I move that Senate File 445, as amended, be recommended to pass.
And move to the floor.
Move to the floor.
Senator Limmer moves Senate File 445 as amended to move to the floor. Members, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Senator Limmer, you are on your way. Senator Latz, you're up next. Committee room. No, I'm kidding. Senator Latz, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Senate File 648 relates to a bill that I authored last year, which was passed and was signed into law. And for those of you who were here last year, you will recall the testimony from law enforcement regarding their concern about not being informed when people are released from a treatment facility when they've been placed there by law enforcement on a 72-hour hold. They have, for reasons of public safety, they brought people into the facilities, they put them on a hold, but then if those people were released early, law enforcement didn't know about it, was not in a position to as effectively protect their communities. So the bill that we passed last year provided that they should be so informed of that release. In the interim, Ramsey County contacted the Judiciary Committee counsel, Ms. Pontius, to discuss their need for an exemption to the new state language relating to their ownership of the county detoxification center. The federal funding that's received by the detox center is tied to federal rules, and those rules contradict the new state law requiring the release of patient information. Specifically under Code of Federal Regulations Title 42, a dedicated drug and alcohol treatment facility that is wholly owned or operated wholly or partly with federal funds is expressly prohibited from releasing any patient information without a court order and patient consent. To do so constitutes a crime. So our statute, frankly, would put detox facilities that are operated by counties in a position of committing a crime if they complied with state law. So this bill here today would add language to the provisions adopted last year to specifically exempt, well, Ramsey County Detox Center, but any detox facility that's in the same situation, from the disclosure requirement to the extent that it would violate federal law regarding the confidentiality of patient records. This language does not undo the provisions requested by law enforcement last year that did pass into state law. Other treatment facilities will continue to be required to provide information to law enforcement when an individual they brought to a treatment facility is released before the expiration of the 72-hour hold. So I have with me to answer questions Claudia Brewington, the Ramsey County Government Relations staff, and Kimberly Parker, Assistant County Attorney in Ramsey County.
Okay, Ms. Brewington, if you could begin. I'm not sure who that is.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Claudia Brewington. I am with Government Relations with Ramsey County. I think that Senator Latz did a good job of covering what the issue is. We do have an arrangement where we are receiving some money from the federal government for the operation of our detox facility that is owned by the county. And as Senator Latz indicated, it comes with rules. Those rules were recently updated, and they were to go into effect, I think it was March 17th. They've delayed it for a short period of time. And the way that this language is written for the bill, it doesn't specify language in the federal statute or the federal rule, so it will just roll with any changes, which makes it much easier. We don't have to keep coming back and visiting this if there are any other additional changes at the federal rule that's related to this. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Why don't we have Ms. Parker? Is it Parker?
It is.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kimberly Parker. I'm an assistant Ramsey County attorney, and I work largely with our sheriff's office. I do both litigation and civil advisory work, and I have nothing to add unless there are questions.
Okay, members, any questions for our testifiers or Senator Latz? Seeing none. Senator Latz.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Senate File 648 be recommended to pass and be sent to the
Floor.
Senate floor.
Senator Latz moves that Senate File 648 pass and be moved to the floor. Members, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Latz.
Thank you.